This week on the GameCritics.com podcast, the Gears of War franchise is an Xbox sensation, but does the series owe its success to the Nintendo 64? Plus, gather round the campfire as we share stories of some of our favorite scary games. All that, plus quick hits on Fallout 3, World of Goo, and your feedback on our premiere episode. It's the GameCritics.com podcast, and it starts right now. It is the GameCritics.com podcast for the week of November 2nd, 2008. We're all hopped up on nerds and peanut butter cups, ready to entertain you. From Chicago, Illinois, my name is Tim Spaeth. We have a great show this week, but first, let me introduce you to the real stars of the show, the well-groomed minds behind GameCritics.com. We'll start with Chi-Kong Liu, broadcasting from New Jersey. He's the owner of Game Critics. Chi, how are you doing?
Thanks to you, Tim. I'm a little tired right now, and that's all thanks to Fallout 3. I've only gotten one hour of sleep last night.
1 hour of sleep. I'm jealous. We'll talk more about Fallout 3 in a second. But first, on the West Coast in Seattle, Washington, senior editor for Game Critics, Mr. Brad Galloway.
Hey, Tim. It's good to be back for the second episode. Among the highlights for me this week, I just got a chance to play the Rock Band drums for the first time a few nights ago. And I've actually gone from being not interested at all to wearing wristbands and having a kick drum installed next to my bed.
Oh, my goodness. Well, up north in Toronto, representing the entire nation-state of Canada, quite a responsibility, Mr. Dan Weissenberger.
Howdy, guys. I am exhausted myself after finally breaking the top 1% of players in all 6 of Geometry Wars 2's modes.
That makes you a bona fide internet celebrity.
Well, I like to think so.
Well, actually, we're really all celebrities. We received so many cards and letters this week, thousands upon thousands. I'm buried up to my waist in a pile of mail. We couldn't possibly read all of them on the air, but we thought we'd pick a couple to share with you. And Dan, I think you've got the first letter. These are some comments on last week's GTA 4 discussion, which actually started as Brad's Saints Row 2 review. Dan, hit us with the letter, would you?
Okay. This letter is from JRG Bruno and was edited a little for broadcast. Nico was initially presented as a more complex kind of GTA protagonist, but quickly turned into a deeply uninteresting serial complainer/killer. His cousin and supposed counterpoint, Roman, has the reverse problem. His one-dimensionality consists of being a hapless, pathological optimist. But what is really striking about their story is how little actually goes on during the 40-plus hours of the main game. We keep seeing the same plot devices and hearing the same in-car conversations from start to finish, all leading to a climax that attempts to draw emotion from the player by arbitrarily placing the fate of one of the characters in our control. And of course, by control, I mean blindly choosing between 2 mission paths. GTA 4 failed on its own terms. It did not deliver on its promise to create a more complex and mature version of the series. My view is that we should celebrate Rockstar's attempts at taking itself more seriously, even as we continue to point out that, in this instance, they failed.
You know, that was a good letter, you guys. Not only because I completely agree with that, but also because I do think that JRG Bruno raises a good point. I myself am not really a fan of GTA 4 at all, for the reasons that he mentioned. But also, one thing that I would like to add to that is, I think that Rockstar stripped so much of the content out, at least if you compare it to San Andreas. And I guess that they were thinking that the so-called mature storyline would kind of compensate, but really it just seemed to me like the same kind of unfulfilling storyline in addition to a gaping hole where the interesting varieties of activities used to be. So I kind of admire what they were going for, and I do agree with Bruno that we should, congratulate them in trying for something new, but I still see the game as kind of a failure from where I'm standing.
I'm with you on that one, Brad, and he mentioned something that I'm glad is out there, because I wanted to bring it up in my review, but I didn't get a chance to because I wanted to avoid spoilers. right at the end of the game, and we're assuming that everyone listening to this has played the game already, whether your girlfriend or your cousin gets killed is based on which mission path you took, but it has nothing to do with the decision you made. Like, their fate is not affected by a decision you made. They just randomly get killed by a hitman who's trying to kill you. And in one way it's your cousin get killed, it's the other way it's your girlfriend, but it has no direct correlation to which decision you made. It's just completely coincidental and essentially random, and that bothered the hell out of me.
Yeah, it's not like you're deciding who lives and who dies. That would have been an interesting, hard choice to make, but you're right, it's totally arbitrary.
But wait a second, Tim, you did finish the game, though, right? And you played it a lot, right?
I did.
I mean, do you think... I mean, I don't know, I didn't finish the game myself, but I don't know, failure seems like a bit of a strong word there. I mean, do you agree that it's a failure?
Do I agree that the game is a failure? Any game I spend 40 hours with, I can't really call a failure. But from a story perspective, by the time I got 20 hours in, I wasn't playing for the story anymore. I was playing for the rush of the endless slaughter. But I had really stopped paying attention to the story at that point.
Okay, so I guess that sort of reinforces what Bruno here is saying. Then, yeah. So fair enough.
Absolutely, and our thanks to JRG Bruno for the letter. We have a second letter. Brad, this Saints Row 2 review, lots and lots of feedback, and this one was a little bit more antagonistic. Dan, you want to go ahead and read this one?
Of course. This is a letter from Anonymous. No to drugs, but yes to killing and prostitution? Are you stupid? Marijuana usage is not a bad thing. Have you ever done marijuana? Let me guess. No. Most closed-minded review ever. And why the fuck are you so cheap? You need a job. Video games should be reviewed as art instead of products. And in order to do that, reviewers need to be worried not about prices. That guy who reviewed Saints Row 2, Brad, is definitely a should I buy this game or not reviewer.
Brad, he's calling you out. He's thrown down the gauntlet.
Wait, first, I think it's important to say that that's Daniel Weissenberger's interpretation of this letter.
It was a dramatic reading.
Yeah, dramatic reading.
If you're going to write a letter to the podcast and you sign your name anonymous, we get to make any kind of voice we want for you. So unless you want to sound like a complete moron, I would suggest take a stand and name yourself. That's kind of step one in talking to us. But, we take anonymous letters too.
Go ahead. I was just going to say, we should point out that Brad does, in fact, have a job. So let's address that point first.
That is completely true. I will own up to the fact that I do have a job, so he's got me there. But so in addressing this comment, I do, number one, I want to point out that what my comments on the podcast weren't an actual review. There is a full-on official review that will be hitting GameCritics.com soon. So when we talk about games, or at least when I talk about games, it's more of what I'm thinking, what I'm feeling at the time. So I just did want to point out that that was not an actual review. But anyway, in regards to my stand on the drug content, it may be complete hypocrisy on my part, but after playing a game like Saints Row, I don't feel like very many people are going to go out and snatch a car and start doing drive-bys or go to the local corner and start doing prostitution. But in my personal experience, I have a lot of friends who actually do, use drugs or who have drug problems. And in the town where I'm from, it was pretty prevalent. So when I see a game that kind of treats drugs with this laissez-faire kind of attitude, it's not much of a hurdle to have someone play and smoke up in the game and then, get high, or, it's just kind of, to me, a little bit of a permissive attitude, which I kind of didn't like. I mean, to me, the violence is kind of abstract, and I really don't think that a lot of people will engage in violence, but, drugs is a real thing for a lot of people, and for me personally, I'm pretty anti-drug. So, just based on my personal experiences, that's where I was coming from. And I did preface my comments by saying that I didn't knock the game, it was just my personal stance. So, I do not, knock points off the official review for that content, but, it may be hypocrisy, it may just be totally arbitrary on my part, but that's where I'm at with that.
I think what you're saying there is fair, Brad. I mean, you made it a little more clear as far as where you're coming from in that. So, yeah, I'm okay with that.
And I just wanted to kick in that as someone who's, pretty pro-drug, Sorry. No, I just thought it was odd seeing that because I had the exact opposite reaction when I played the Scarface game that I reviewed for the website. I actually found the drug dealing in games to be even more abstract than the murder because when you're playing a video game where you shoot people, you're shooting digital people right in front of you. But when you play a video game where you're selling drugs, the actual damage done by drugs is 3 or 4 degrees removed from anything that happens in the game. You know, in the game, it's just yet another thing that you pick up and sell for points or cash. Maybe it's a little different in Saints Row 2, but it's weird. I had the exact opposite feeling of drugs as being worse than murder when I was playing Scarface.
If I could just respond to that real quick, Dan, I kind of agree with what you're saying, and I don't want to come off sounding like I'm some kind of giant prude or something, because I'm not. But in a game like Saints Row 2, where you're playing the role of the title character, I kind of objected to the fact that, like, my character was taking drugs even though I didn't want to. Like, it was a choice that was happening to me that I would not have made if I had had that choice, you know. In the discussion of Fallout 3 that we're about to get to in a minute, you know, I really appreciate that. Like, pretty much anything you do in the world is up to you, and I can play that the way that I want to play it, but in Saints Row 2, you know, my character starts token up, and my first lieutenant has, like, a bag of drugs that they're snorting, and, you know, if I'm going to be that character, and if I'm going to take over Stillwater on my own, like the game tells me I should, I don't really want to do that, so I was kind of disappointed, but, you know, you can't have everything.
I have one question to add before we move on.
Sure.
Like the landmark video game Narc, do you get powers from these drugs?
No, and you can't actually like take the drugs in the midst of gameplay. It's only during the cutscenes.
Oh, okay. Color me disappointed.
It'll be in Saints Row 3, I'm sure.
The landmark title, Narc. Well, our thanks to Anonymous. And again, if you would like to join in the discussion, podcast@gamecritics.com is where you should send your cards and letters. And if you're lucky, we will read them on the air. So we mentioned Fallout. Yes, go ahead.
Let me just add this question. I just wanted to ask Dan. You know, so is it a good thing if it does affect the gameplay, or is it a bad thing if the drugs affects the gameplay?
Oh, it's a bad thing. It's a very bad thing. Narc was a terrible game. Just cannot believe. In that game, you did crack to become a crack shot. Oh. Oh, never again. Never again.
Oh my. Okay. Well, I am not playing Fallout 3. I desperately want to play Fallout 3. There is a desire burning deep within me. So I'm going to live vicariously through you guys. Brad and Chi, I know you're playing it. Tell me of its apocalyptic glory.
All right, will do. And again, I would just like to preface by saying this is kind of an impressions piece, not an actual review. But in any case, my thoughts on the game are really extremely positive. I don't think I really need to explain what this game is about, but you know, there may be a couple listeners who are living under a rock. Basically, Fallout is an open-world RPG where the character you play emerges from an underground bunker and is let loose in the remains of an alternate timeline, Washington, D.C., after America has only barely survived a nuclear holocaust. To be honest, it didn't really grab me right off the bat like I thought it would. This game is very similar in structure to Bethesda's previous work, Oblivion, which was, you know, a monster hit on the 360 and other systems PC. And I wasn't the biggest fan of Oblivion. I liked it, but it wasn't crazy. You know, I didn't fall head over heels in love with it. And when you start playing Fallout, it seems like nothing so much as Oblivion plus guns. But once you get a little further in, it really is clear to see that the experience overall is really superior. I mean, the time and effort put into creating this Washington, D.C. environment is pretty incredible. I mean, at first it seems like you're in the middle of brown rocks and dust, but after a little exploration, the details really start popping to the surface, and you realize, like, what an incredible undertaking it must have been to create this world. And not only does it create a really great sense of immersion, I mean, I have to say that, to Fallout's credit, I'm usually the kind of gamer who goes for the path of least resistance. You know, I tend to skip anything that's not essential and just go straight to the end as fast as I can. But in Fallout, I find myself going off the beaten path and just exploring for exploration's sake. And for me, that never happens. So, Chi, what do you think of it?
I had a similar feeling as you when I first started playing. I wasn't completely overwhelmed. mainly because it felt like, sort of a mod of Oblivion. The technology is still very similar, and it's starting to look a little dated. But at the same time, I'm one of the guys. I mean, I loved Oblivion, first of all, right? And I'm one of the few guys that didn't, have a problem with as far as the characters looking like zombies and all that kind of stuff. But now I'm starting to notice it after I've heard all the complaints, and now that it's sort of like a couple of years after the fact. So the technology's looking a little dated to me. But once you start getting into it, I mean, the storytelling in this game is just like, it's unparalleled, and once you start one mission, you encounter a bunch of other missions, and before you know it, you're losing sleep, you're ignoring your kids, and
let me ask you, Chi, since you bring up this, let me call you on that, because I would actually say that it tells a story, but I wouldn't say that it's a good example of storytelling, and maybe you want to qualify that. I was actually going to say, if I had to pick one weakness of Fallout so far, and just for the listeners, I'm about 22 hours in, so I have not completed the game as of the recording of this podcast, but I'm pretty far into it. And for me, I think that Fallout's biggest weakness is that it doesn't really have significant amounts of dialogue, or not convincing dialogue. When I meet these characters, I see them as little more than something to give me a quest. And you talk to them once or twice, and then you've completely played out the discussion tree, and there's nothing new. So you can talk to them a million times after that. It never goes any deeper, and you don't really learn anything about anybody. Like, for example, Mass Effect, which is a game I loved, had an awesome amount of dialogue, and you really felt like you got to know the characters really well, and I was a little bit disappointed to see that did not appear so far in Fallout. I mean, I'm not saying that it's game ruining, because it's not. I'm in love with the game right now, but I think it's its major weakness. And if you're holding it up as a good example of storytelling, I mean, do you think that's accurate, or what do you think about that?
I mean, the way I've addressed it is this, and I haven't played Mass Effect, so I can't compare it yet, outside of just what I've sort of seen, from trailers and things like that. But I think here's let me tell you a story about like when I was playing, and when my wife came over, and she's asking me about like, oh, who's that character? And I'm like, oh yeah, this is the guy, like that, I had to go find when I, because his sister was looking for him, and then when I went to that town, they explained that he had been kidnapped by these guys, and then when I went over there, this guy explained this and that, and I found myself really into like trying to explain every single character. And she kept asking me like, who's this guy and who's that guy, so. I can't say for sure that structurally it's perfect, but it's certainly better than like the whole, cutscene dynamic that we have as far as like, here's a cutscene and then here's the action, right? And it's more integrated into the whole plot. And I don't know if the tree dialogue isn't sort of knocking your socks off or whatever, but for me, it's doing a pretty good job, and I find the writing's very strong. The voice acting, I consider it serviceable. I don't think it's great because, they all sort of, sound alike, but I think that was kind of a necessary concession given the sheer amount of characters that are in the story. So it's a tough call. I hear what you're saying, that it's, it can feel a little stilted, but yet at the same time, I don't know. I feel myself just very into what's going on with these characters' lives, and I feel very compelled to help every single one of them, which is what keeps me playing.
So let me ask you.
Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Let me ask you guys this. What interests me most about this game is the opportunity to play as pure evil. And my understanding is that you can play as kind of a paragon of virtue, or as an agent of chaos and anarchy and destruction. But is it a meaningful difference? Does it affect the gameplay?
Well, I've only I'm on my first playthrough of the game right now, and I'm playing as being a good character, as good as you can possibly get. I've got max karma, and everybody loves me. Every time I show up in town, they're giving me things because I'm just like that cool. But based on some of the things I've seen, and when I was at PAX recently, and I got a developer's walkthrough, it did seem to have a really significant difference whether you chose the good or evil route. I mean, for example, in the first town, one of the very first quests is to either deactivate a nuclear bomb that's in the middle of the town or to set it off. And if you deactivate it, then you get to use that town's resources, and there's like a whole string of quests that play off of the people you meet there. But if you set off that bomb and you annihilate the town, you go off on a whole different path, and the people that you meet are completely different. So I can't say firsthand how different the evil and good plotlines are, but just from what I've seen, and based on the people I've killed so far, I definitely think it's pretty significant.
So my ultimate goal here, and you tell me if this is possible, I want to play as the guy from No Country for Old Men. But I haven't actually seen No Country for Old Men, so it's more my perception of what he was like in the commercials, which is just like this guy who just walks up to counters and then kills people just for the sheer fun of it. Am I going to be able to do that in the game?
Chi?
You should be able to. I mean, I haven't done any kind of rampant killing sprees or anything like that. But, it was the same with Oblivion, I mean, one part of the genius of the gameplay is how they're able to have this sort of very flexible structure where, certain things can happen and it won't break the remaining parts of the story, So I think you're good to go, man. I think you're going to have a lot of fun with this one.
As far as I can tell, you can kill every single person you meet, I believe.
Oh, Tim, I gotta say, why are you aiming so low? Why be Anton Chigurh when you could be the Humongous?
The Humongous?
What are we talking?
Am I the only person who's seen The Road Warrior?
Oh, I've seen The Road Warrior, but I didn't know his name.
Oh, yeah.
I know the guy who you're talking about now. Now, okay.
Oh, I have one question about Fallout 3 before we move on. I was a huge aficionado of Fallout 1 and Fallout 2, but now that I'm taking part in National Novel Writing Month, I'm not going to be able to get to Fallout 3 until December at the earliest. So I've got to know, does it have the deliciously obscene hypergore of parts 1 and 2?
I never actually finished Fallout 1, and it's been a long time since I played it, but I can vouch for Fallout 3 that it is quite gory. I mean, you're getting, splattering headshots with eyeballs and chunks of skull flying all over the place, and these little bits of, I don't even know what, bone and gristle go all over the place. So
Bits O people.
Brad,
Bits O people.
What's
exactly.
that exploding perk or whatever that thing is? That perk that,
Yeah, Bloody Mess. You can get a perk that makes people explode into, all kinds of just piles of gore with... you shoot them in the foot and their whole body explodes, so you can get that.
I love
perk.
it. The old games had that perk. Yeah, I think it was
Yes,
even
they
called
did.
Bloody Mess,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Oh, I can't wait. I can't
Let me
wait.
just add,
You and me
one
both.
other thing to the Fallout 3 was I'm a sort of rewards. I would consider myself a rewards based gamer where I really enjoy just getting stuff, and this game is very good about that. That's another thing that keeps me hooked. If you're not getting some new weapon or some new gadget, there's always something to acquire. So for everyone who likes getting stuff, this is the game.
Oh, it sounds brilliant. I can't wait. Well, one game I have been playing is World of Goo. I'm playing it on PC. Brad, this is your latest dalliance in your love affair with WiiWare. How are you enjoying it?
Oh, I hate to sound like a broken record, but it's another really fantastic game on WiiWare, I have to admit. Anybody who follows my blog will know that I was really resistant to drop $15 on it because I'm just not convinced that there's a lot of download stuff out there that's worth the cash. But I am definitely eating my serving of humble pie this week. The game is pretty much a work of genius and definitely one of the best things I've played all year. The gist of World of Goo is that you have these little balls of goo, and there are several different types, and in each stage there's a pipe that you need to reach. And of course, these pipes are always as far as humanly possible from the starting point. So, using these balls, you attach them to each other to make little structures, and if the pipe is at the top of the screen, then you build a tower. If the pipe is at the far side, you build a bridge, and so on. It doesn't sound very exciting the way I describe it, and that's really my fault. Apologies to 2D Boy, the developers. But the physics simulation and the way the balls interact with the environment is phenomenal. And although that in itself would be really commendable, the thing that drives this into top 10 territory is that the level designs are incredibly intelligent and absolutely well done. They are a perfect mix of logic, skill, and experimentation. And on top of all that stuff, the artwork is highly stylized and it's gorgeous. I love it. The story is great, even though they say it's not really a story. I believe the developers call it a suggested emotional experience. And this is the kind of game, it's totally brilliant all the way through. You can tell the developers know what they're doing, and this is the perfect example to show that you don't need a staff of 100 programmers and $30 million to make the kind of game that can rock the industry. I mean, definitely one of the best things I've played all year and well worth the $15. Sorry I didn't pony up right away.
Yeah, I spent $20 on Steam, and I don't regret it one bit. It is a perfect, and this is a new genre of game that I'm into. It's lying on the couch with my laptop, playing a game one-handed while my wife watches Grey's Anatomy. It's really, and that's an entire genre that includes Puzzle Quest, it includes Peggle Knights. I'm completely into this because it's a perfect thing that I can just be in the same room as my wife. If there's nudity on the television, I can look up and enjoy it and then go back to the game.
Nice.
Should be watching Grey's Anatomy.
So it's such a brilliant game. Only one complaint about the PC version, and that is you can't change the resolution. And I don't know why that is. I think you're locked into, I want to say 800 by 600, and my laptop's at 1440 by 900, and I'd really like to upscale it. The game still looks great. It still looks absolutely beautiful, but I just don't understand why you couldn't change the resolution. But just a minor quibble for just an absolutely wonderful game.
Agreed.
So, that's it for Quick Hits. When we come back from this break, the seeds of Stop and Pop. We'll be right back. Gears of War 2 is just days away from release. In fact, by the time you hear this, you may already be playing it. In our first feature this week, we look at the series' secret origins, not on the Xbox, but on the N64. Chi, can this be?
Yep, it's possible, dude. All right, let me just keep going with this. All right.
Well, you've convinced me. You've completely convinced me. All right, go ahead.
Yeah, Kill Switch is the game that's often credited for inspiring, Cliffy B and, with the whole stop and pop or duck and cover or whatever you want to call it gameplay. But really, the game that's really not mentioned and it should be is Winback, and that's the game that appeared on the N64, and that was clearly the precursor to Kill Switch. And that was done by Koei Games, and the developers was Omega Force, the guys behind Dynasty Warriors, actually, way back in 1999. And I know this because we did an interview with a Koei producer, Tomoike Takazumi, when we first started the site. And let me just read an excerpt from that interview where I asked him, what served as the main inspiration for Winback, and his response was, one of our staff used to make shooting games for arcade video games. He came to us with an idea of making an action game from the third-person viewpoint that utilized N64's rather special controller, with the 3D stick and Z-trigger, etc. That was what started our project. I guess you could say that it wasn't any game that inspired us, but it was the controller. So I personally thought that the use of the controller was one of the most innovative uses right after Mario 64, and I asked him to elaborate on that and how it was designed. Takazumi's response was, "We have not received a lot of praise for our use of the controller, so I'm particularly happy with the fact that you noticed. Though the controls may give the impression of being complicated, I believe that our system provides a way to do a variety of actions through a few simple controls." So anyway, so getting back to why I'm bringing this up, well, there's two reasons for that. First of all, I'm a big fan of Winback, and I think that game doesn't get the recognition that it deserves. And B, I think this whole situation highlights the importance of recognizing innovation and the differences in values between gamers and critics. When Winback was released in 1999, I was the only critic to give the game a 9.5. Most critics complained about the poor AI. The story was kind of cheesy. The graphics weren't that great either, and especially when you compared all those elements to Metal Gear Solid, which was sort of the top of the line when it came to all those categories. And most people don't even think of Winback as a great game. But the funny thing is, without Winback though, you wouldn't have Gears of War or even games like Uncharted. Did I know that Gears of War would come around and be so popular? No, I didn't really know that. But when I was playing Winback, I kind of had it in the back of my mind that this is I'm playing something very special here, and then gamers need to pay more attention to it. So, I'm glad Gears of War did come around and it sort of vindicated my original praise of Winback. And it also explains the, there's the differences that we have between as critics and as gamers. I think one of the most common complaint of critics is that they value innovation too much and we don't focus enough on the gameplay. And, that's because we don't judge a game purely based on the experience, of the moment, and the fun of it. We try to recognize, is this going to have a valuable contribution and elevate games as a medium? And, that's the key difference between, game reviews and game criticism.
I agree with that, Chi, and I think an important thing that we like to hype at our site is that we're always looking at what games bring to the table. I mean, it takes more than just graphics and a good soundtrack to get a 10 from us. I mean, it's like, what are the developers thinking? What are they trying to do? Are they innovating an idea? Are they improving something that's been tried before? Are they, what are they doing? What are they really after? I mean, if a game doesn't bring much to the table, then we're probably not going to spend that much time on it, and it's probably not going to get very much love at our site, which is exactly why we did give Winback a very positive review when it first came out. I think we were, like you said, we were one of the only sites on the net that really gave it some love at that time.
Well, you're absolutely right, Brad, and I just want to point out that as perhaps the only person in the world who loves Winback even more than Chi, I would like to give a shout-out to it for being, the grandfather of the stop-and-pop gameplay and the back-to-the-wall gameplay, because as someone who's not particularly fond of Gears of War, I like the fact that Winback is a direct predecessor of what I consider the perfect action game setup, Rainbow Six Vegas by Ubisoft, which took the thing that Winback created and Killswitch perfected and mixed it with a first-person shooter to create the ultimate action game setup. And none of that would have been possible without Winback. So, seriously, if you haven't picked it up, try and get an old PS2 copy of it, because it's worth a second look.
It's not on Virtual Console yet, is it?
No, it has not made it to Virtual Console on the Wii yet, but we're keeping our fingers crossed.
Absolutely.
All right. Fantastic. Well, Chi, thanks very much, and we do hope people go out and check out Winback. We'll take a break. When we come back, brains. We missed Halloween by a few days. I don't know about you, but the smell of pumpkin and human flesh still permeates my home, so I'm in the mood to talk about our favorite scary games. Brad, why don't you start us off?
Okay, sure, glad to, Tim. My selection is Clock Tower for the original PlayStation. I love this game, and I think it never got the due it deserved. For me, the most notable thing about Clock Tower is that it was the most faithful to what a slasher movie is. Like, it follows the motif where you've got a group of people who are on the run from a killer, everybody's really scared, you don't know what's going on. It feels like nothing so much as a slasher movie turned into a video game. So, in Clock Tower, what happens is you have a group of people who are running and hiding from this short hunchback carrying a giant pair of scissors, and fortunately, the writers just really scored a home run because they called him Scissor Man. Very creative. But the thing is that as you go through the game, it really relates to what I think I would do in real life if someone was chasing me with a giant pair of scissors. I would hide behind a couch. I would duck inside a dryer. I would, be inside a cardboard box or behind a door. You didn't really have a way to fight back. I mean, you could stun him really briefly, but the best thing to do was just to hide. So you'd be under a bed, or you'd be in another room, and hopefully he would just pass you by. It's really tense at times, because you know that if he finds you, it's game over. You don't have a gun to pull out, or you don't have a grenade to stick on him. So I really liked the sense of disempowerment that it gave. And I will say that this game actually scarred me quite a bit. At one point in the game, the characters are trapped in a building that has an elevator running through a couple different floors, And if you get into the elevator and close the doors in time, you can escape Scissorman and get to another floor for, another 10 minutes of safety. But the tension of that scene was waiting to see whether or not his giant shears were going to come shooting through the elevator door and stab you before the doors got closed. And in fact, this kind of sequence freaked me out so bad that now, whenever I get into an elevator in real life, the first thing I always do is check to see whether or not the closed door button actually works fast enough for me to get away from Scissorman. True story. It happens to me every day.
Oh, God.
So, for no other reason than that, I think I really have to give props to Clock Tower for being one of the scariest games that I've ever played. The graphics don't hold up, but it was really scary.
I'm going to second that on Clock Tower and point out that they completely missed the boat when they brought the series to the PlayStation 2 because it had a lot of the hiding from a big scary monster, but then for some reason they added boss fights where you got to use a bow and arrow to kill the monsters, and it took all of the scare out of it.
How did you defeat Scissorman in the first game if you weren't able to fight back in any way?
You just kind of moved on and just escaped him. You left him behind and moved on to different areas, and I think at the very end, I don't remember exactly how it all finished off, but he was just kind of unmasked and the whole thing kind of came to a close. I don't think you actually defeated him, or I don't think you actually killed him. Dan, do you recall?
Yeah, actually. There's both a real Scissorman and a copycat Scissorman, and the copycat Scissorman gets shot towards the end of the game and killed. And the real Scissorman, who's more supernatural, you have to go through this really, really tough segment where, like a classic adventure game, if you didn't pick up the right items at the right point, you just get killed no matter what. And you have to cast a spell to suck him basically into hell after you find out who he really is. A secret which, by the way, was given away in the game's manual.
Well, that's a brilliant move. They were on the ball there. All right. Well, thanks, Brad. Dan, your favorite scary game?
Well, as you know, I'm a bit of a horror buff when it comes to games, and I've got to say, like Brad, I think disempowerment is the key theme to horror, because jump scares are all well and good, and I know, Tim, you have one that's really jumpy and scary to talk about. But the thing that I love is being put in a situation where you don't have the tools to cope with it, and the best you can hope for is to get out alive. And for me, the best game for that is Siren, because the genius of Siren, which is a Silent Hill sort of game where there's a creepy Japanese town where something bizarre and occulty is happening. I'm not going to talk too much about it because it's still a current game, what with the release of Silent Blood Curse over the PlayStation Network, so people can enjoy the surprises themselves. But the genius of Siren is that instead of just controlling one character over the length of the game, you actually control a whole series of people having different experiences in the same supernatural town at the same time. And the effect of this is a number of those characters can get killed. And for me, there was never anything more terrifying than playing my best through a section of the game and escaping and hiding and fighting when I absolutely had to and doing a fantastic job of it, and then finding out that the character still gets killed. That's the genius of that is the genius of Siren, is that no matter how well you do, no matter how good you are at the game, not everybody is going to make it out alive, which gives you a real sense of threat in every sequence of the game, especially the game's really terrifying centerpiece moment, a bit where a little girl you're playing as is trapped in her own house with her zombified family, who she has to somehow sneak past, even though it's one of those tiny Japanese houses with 3-foot wide hallways.
See, it's interesting that you would consider that genius. To me, it sounds incredibly demoralizing, and that the game experience is
unfair.
Not necessarily unfair, but just futile. Like, I'm playing this game and it's futile, but maybe that's just how we're trained to play games, and this is sort of skewing it in a different direction.
You're absolutely right there, Tim, because I think the key element here is we're trained to think that if we play a game very well, we're going to get a good ending. But the fact is, in Siren, your skill is no guarantor of success simply because the characters are just regular people in a supernatural situation far out of their wheelhouse. Like, they can and do get killed by it, and there's nothing you can do about it. And I think that's part of what made the game so unpopular. It was not a big hit here. It was such a minor hit that the sequel didn't even come out in North America. But the fact is, you're right, we're trained to think that if we play well enough, we're going to have a good experience. But the fact is, and I think this is the key to horror, just like in a horror movie, just because you like a character doesn't mean they're going to survive. Here, just because you play a character well doesn't mean you're going to get a success out of it.
Have you had a chance to play any of the more recent ones that have appeared on PlayStation Network?
I have not picked up Siren Blood Curse yet, but I am looking forward to it because, from what I hear, it really does continue the Siren tradition of multi-characters and just absolutely grueling horror.
Okay.
Well, the game I'm going to bring to the table here is, and it's not so much the entire game, it's a single scary moment in a game with lots of scary moments, and that is, simply put, the dentist in BioShock.
Ooh.
I am not typically afraid of dentists. Indeed, I cherish them, I embrace them, I hug my dentist, but this moment it takes place early in the game, and you are exploring this abandoned, basically this medical facility. One wing of it is a dentist's office, and you haven't encountered any enemies in a while. So you're kind of at this sense of peace, like, oh, this is a nice break in the action. I'm going to get a chance to explore this area. And you go into the dentist's office, and there is one of the audio recordings on a table in the corner, and you can approach this table from various directions. And when you approach the table, if you choose to, and you turn around in a particular direction, suddenly a dentist, more like a zombie in dentist's clothes, is standing right in front of you, out of nowhere. And I have never jumped at a game before, but at that moment I jumped, because he doesn't attack you. He just stands there, and he stares at you. And you expect enemies, every enemy in BioShock to that point had attacked you, and this guy's just standing there. And I'm thinking, God, what is he going to do? What is he going to do? And if you make any sort of provocative action, if you reload your ammo, if you reach for a plasmid, he will attack you. But you're not expecting it. It comes out of nowhere. And we'll link to the YouTube clip in our show notes. But what it does is it sets the tone for the rest of the game, because it's clearly a scripted moment, but it feels very unscripted, because I didn't have to go to that table. I didn't have to turn around in that direction. If I hadn't, then I wouldn't have seen him. I remember talking to Brad, and he told me that he never encountered that moment in the game at all. And I compare that to, say, something like Doom 3 with the monster closet, where the developers know you're going to walk down this hall, so they know that they can put an enemy right here, and it's guaranteed to kick off every time. In BioShock, that's not the case. And so there was this general sense of discomfort for the next few levels, because, God, if the dentist was there, what other medical practitioner is going to terrify me?
How early does that appear in the game, rather?
I think it's in the first 5 hours or so. Maybe first 3 or so. I don't recall exactly, but
I believe the medical facility is the second area you go to. So yeah, it's pretty quick.
Yeah. But anyway, and that really was the last time that I was scared by a game. So if you haven't tried it, recommend you check it out.
I'm not particularly a big fan of scary games to begin with, but I'm kind of surprised no one here is bringing up Silent Hill, which is sort of like noted as like the scariest of all games, right?
Yeah, I think Silent Hill is I think that's a pretty common scary game. I haven't played Silent Hill only because I look at it and it's got those old school Resident Evil tank controls that I can't bear to deal with. So that's why I haven't played it, but I don't know, Dan, if you've spent some time with Silent Hill.
I have spent a lot of time with every Silent Hill, and if I were to try and go into all the scary moments for those games, we would be here for the next 3 or 4 hours. They are the jackpot of scary moments, which is, I think, why we wanted to focus on some, a little more minor ones you might not have played, because I think everybody out there in video game land knows that if they want a really terrifying experience, Silent Hill's where you go first.
Absolutely. Well, hopefully we've given our audience some games to chew on there. But that's it. That's the show. That'll do it for this week's episode of the GameCritics.com podcast. Folks, we crave your feedback. Send your comments, thoughts, feelings, suggestions, hopes, dreams to podcast@GameCritics.com. That's also where you can send your podcast title suggestions. We're still looking for a name for this little show. Remember, if we pick your title, you will join us on the air in an upcoming episode. A dream come true for most of the world, I would think. Again, that's podcast@GameCritics.com. Feel free to also sign up on the forums, join in the discussion happening there. Chi, what is happening on Game Critics this week? Anything exciting?
Yeah.
It's always exciting.
It's always exciting, absolutely. Well, we just published a review of Master of Monster Lair over the weekend, and for the rest of the week, we have Mercenaries 2, World in Flames, Line Rider 2, Unbound, and Stalker, Clear Sky, and Saints Row 2 all coming up on the site. So look for those reviews this week.
All games I don't have time to play, but I look forward to reading about them at GameCritics.com. So for all of us, Chi, Brad, Dan, the entire Game Critics family, thanks for joining us, everyone, and we will see you next week. Bye-bye.